Welcome to the Probate Realtor Show, your one source for selling and buying real estate through trust and probate. Hear directly from the best attorneys and trusted advisors on how executors and administrators navigate the probate process in and out of court. Being a personal representative or successor trustee can be a daunting task, and often beneficiaries don't have a clear plan. Let us help you make the right decision for your clients, your family, and your legacy. And now, here's your host, the probate realtor himself, Matias Baker Masucci.
Welcome, everybody, to another very exciting episode of our show. This week, we have something really special for you this week. I mean, I am excited just thinking about it. We have George McCleary. George, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Matias. Happy to be here.
Okay, so people get this. George is an expert in squatters and deed fraud. So we're going to take these one thing apart. So first of all, let's define what is a squatter?
What is a squatter? So that's actually a really good question because this question gets messed up a lot. And so first I'll tell you what a squatter is not, and that it is not a non-paying tenant.
Right.
Squatter is somebody who is occupying a property, usually making some kind of claim to it, and they never had the right to be there in the first place.
Yes, very good. Thank you for defining that. Now, adding something to my audience, this is very good. Non-paying tenants or family member who have a right to be there, they're not squatters. And I'm going to give you another tip. Obviously, this show doesn't give legal advice, but we give information as much as we can. Once you accept the rent, whether you have a lease or not, once you accept the rent of the people in your house, that's a tenancy at will. So they're no longer squatters. So if you go into your house and there's somebody squatting, you say, just give me $100, you could stay overnight. They're no longer squatters. They now paid you rent, and that shows by estoppel that you are their landlord. So be careful.
That's correct.
Okay. So in the city of LA, you'd be surprised. I mean, we get it all the time. Like listings are empty, people break in, people, it's just the way it is. It's been happening over the past like 5 or 6 years, even more. So what happens, George? Somebody goes to their house, they open the door, maybe it's a rental, maybe it's empty, maybe they're getting ready to sell it, and there's somebody living in it, and they don't know who it is.
Yeah. That's the nightmare scenario, isn't it?
Right.
So how it happens? Well, so there's levels of it. I've dealt with low level squatters where in my like flips and developments, I arrive there one day and there's like a homeless guy, asleep, on the bare floor, and I say, all right, man, time to move along, and he moves along. Is that a squatter? No, not really.
Right.
The squatters of modern day are entering into properties that they know are vacant because they've already vetted them and figured out that there's like an out-of-state owner, an inattentive owner. The lawn's overgrown. They got reasons. They get in there one way or another. They either like pick the lock or just smash a window or whatever. And they get in there and then they establish tenancy. They basically fool their way into establishing the rights of a tenant. And the way they do that is they pull a fiction where they move in their stuff. They move in their buddies. They cut the lawn. They've got their car in the driveway. They wave to the neighbors so that when the police officer arrives, so that the owner discovers, says, hey, what the heck are you doing here? Get out of here. The guy says, well, I got this lease. Of course, it's fake. So it's a fake lease. It's been crafted to fool anybody who's looking at it. Maybe it makes sense. Maybe it doesn't, but it doesn't matter. It's a lease. It's a piece of paper. And then utilities are in his name so that when the police officer shows up, you got a he said, she said situation. We got one guy saying, hey, this guy can't be here. This is my house. And the other guy saying, well, I mean, no, this is my stuff. This is where I live. And the problem is, Matias, possession is 9/10 of the law. And the shirt on your back is presumed to be your own unless you've got somebody that says that it's not and can prove it. So if you're in possession of the house, the police officer is going to be like, all right, man, we got two guys telling me two completely different things. You guys are going to go have to sort this out in court. So I can't just pull this guy out of his house just because you say that, he's not supposed to be here. Even if you can prove that you own the house, like, sorry, I can't do it. So that at that moment, that's a nightmare situation and you've got yourself a squatter.
Okay, so very good. Let's make this important distinction for our audience. We're not talking about people who are breaking into vacant properties to sleep, or they're doing that. What we are talking about here is professional fraudster who are establishing residency through trickery, and then it makes it very difficult to remove them from the premises. In California, I would say in Los Angeles, it would make it nearly impossible. So what we were addressing here is not somebody who has nowhere to sleep and they're sleeping in your lawn. That's a different situation. That's just somebody, you know, who's trespassing essentially. We are talking about people who are, who knows, they are sophisticated enough to know what properties to target. Just like you said, absentee owners, you know, neglect this, neglect that. The property's been vacant for a long time. So what happens? Like you go to your house and you find somebody that is living in it. I mean, and you call the police and they, so you have to solve this through the courts, right?
Well, yes and no. That is one
Okay.
way to do it, but that's just the thing. I talked with a ton of people after my squatting video went viral that
Mm-hmm.
were facing this exact situation, and the one thing that every last one of them had in common is they just didn't know what to do. They felt
Right.
helpless. They're like, okay, well, I called the police. They didn't help, so I guess next step is I call my lawyer, or next step is I call my friends and we
Mm-hmm.
come in and raid the place. Everybody's got a different reaction to this, but of course, most people are thinking I should call my lawyer and see what my lawyer says. And so most
Right.
lawyers are going to look at this and say, all right, well, looks like the police aren't going to trespass the person, so we're either going to have to get rid of them through eviction or ejectment. And probably eviction because you'll get a little lesson about the difference between those two from your lawyer. But the
Mm-hmm.
short version is that ejectment is they never had the right to be there in the first place, and you kick them out, which of course that's the way you should go. But the problem is that's a long docket process. It takes a long time and it's expensive. And the entire time, the squatter's living there for free. So
Right.
that's not a good way to go. So then you got eviction. And that's a whole lot faster. It's a short docket process. But in a lot of places, it's still really long because they file continuances. They get these lawyers that are appointed to them for free. The squatters do, and they get to stick around for months or a year or even longer with the eviction. And you've basically tacitly given them the rights as tenants by doing that. You're saying like, all right, we're just going to evict you like we do a tenant. So that's going the legal route. And then in my squatter defender course, I talk about some of the conventional routes, and then some of the unconventional routes. You got a lot of choices at that point. And so the point of me making the course is to lay them all out, show everybody, not make any real recommendations because some of
Mm-hmm.
them are a little like kind of gray area, shall we say. But you do have a lot of choices at that point.
Interesting. So one of the things that in California, especially in Los Angeles, when you do an eviction, they're actually called unlawful detainer, right?
Hmm.
Unlawful detainer. The person is in possession of the property unlawfully, whether they've broken the contract or, and in Los Angeles, if you're lucky, it will take you 6 months. That's how long it's going to take you. If you have somebody was able to establish residency somehow fraudulently, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, George, why aren't these people in jail? Why is it so complex? What happened?
Well, so if you can't get them arrested as trespassers, then at that point you're like, all right, well, what should I do? And so then you're taking them to court and you're basically kind of admitting like, okay, this person is like a tenant. They have rights. And so the justice system is not going to be prosecuting them. The DA is not involved here. They've never been
Hmm.
arrested or charged with a crime. And you're basically, even if they did break in, you're not getting a full-blown investigation of this thing because you're in court to evict them as a tenant.
Hmm.
And if you're telling the police to take action and they're not going to do it, then it's just not going to go the criminal route and you're going the civil route. And good luck winning a civil case and actually getting a judgment and extracting that money from a squatter because most of these people don't have any money. And so
Right.
it's going to be a worthless judgment. So people rarely go after them. And so, yeah, so some of them have been prosecuted for breaking and entering when there's been a preponderance of evidence and people have really dug in,
Hmm.
maybe had a relationship with a lawyer, a district attorney that can make this happen, but it's extremely rare, unfortunately.
Got it. Got it. So let's talk about the other. How does this tie into like deed fraud?
Mhm.
What is the well? First of all, I guess let's define it. Let's do the same thing as we did with squatting. What is deed fraud?
Right. So the deed fraud I found out about, I'd never heard of it before, but then in the course of just talking to victims of squatters, I found out about a guy who had who's a victim of deed fraud. And what happened with him is this squatter had put the home title into his name. So when the police showed up, they said like, well, he said, well, this is my house, as you can see. And so that struck me as particularly insidious because that's a whole different deal going on title to a property. That's,
Right.
all your home equity right there. But then I started digging a little further and the real scam. So squatters will do that every now and again, but most of the time, no, they're not doing it. They're just looking for tenancy. And but what they're doing with the deed fraud scam is essentially they're taking the home title and putting it in their name via a
Hmm.
fraudulent forged deed. And forging the deed, it's not like forging $100 bill or anything like that. It's really simple. It's a simple white piece of paper, grantor, grantee, notarized signatures. You can forge the notary stamp. You can steal one. You can order it online, get on the dark web. And they're putting the property titles into either their name, but more often than not, a fake ID, and then selling the property with their fake ID that they opened up a bank account for, and having all the proceeds from that sale wired into their bank account. So they're targeting
Wow.
high equity properties, and so then when the end buyer says like, all right, fraudster, I'll buy this property from you. Let's open up escrow. Title officer says, wow, this property just traded 3 weeks ago. Looks like there's a loan from a previous owner that didn't get paid off. All right, well, we got to pay off this, $40,000 loan, but the house is worth $500,000. So it looks like your
Hmm.
sales proceeds are going to be, let's see, about 550 grand. So yeah, you gotta check my math on that, but you get the idea. It's
Right.
you're stealing the equity of the property. So then after you've had your equity stolen, you go to the title company and be like, hey, insurance people, I just got robbed for $500,000. Help me out. And they're going to say, ooh, here's the thing. Alta owners policies don't actually cover fraud and impersonation from the policy date forward. They only cover fraud and impersonation and that type of thing back in the past from before you owned the property. So that property owner, they're out of luck and their equity's gone. And it's an extremely sad story
Wow.
that unfortunately has happened to quite a few people.
I think in the state of California, particularly in Los Angeles, in our market, it would be very difficult to do. I haven't heard cases, but I guess it depends by the municipality that you're in. We do, when there are flags that are raised when you open a preliminary title report, when and check the insurability of title. Um, they request statement of information and they check for if it's a fake ID, they won't be able to find, they won't be able to match the information. But either way, I'm sure that, like anywhere, it can happen. Obviously, it can happen even in LA. I'm just
It
saying.
definitely has. In fact, the preeminent deed fraud lawyer is actually located in Los Angeles and helped a
Oh,
whole lot
wow,
of people in
interesting.
there. And you're right. So getting a false identification, if it's just like something you just completely made up, that's one thing. But if you go on the dark web, you can get name, social address. Like you basically assume the identity of somebody else,
Oh, I
and
see.
then and then with that information, you've got the bank accounts, and these things are actually fairly inexpensive, actually.
Wow, that's crazy. That is crazy.
Pretty
And
wild.
what got you interested in this? It's such a unique area. What got you interested in it?
Well, I guess going back to the beginning, my viral video. So I've been a real estate professional for about 20 years now. I was a broker, investor,
Hmm.
developer. I've worn a lot of hats in the real estate industry, but um, as an owner, as a landlord, I was getting a little fed up with landlord-tenant law in general around here in the city of Portland, Oregon, but also the frequency with which people I knew were getting victimized by squatters. So I made a video. It was called I Stole a House, and it completely blew up, got tens of millions of views, and landed me cable news appearances, Dr. Phil, News Nation, Fox News called. And so in the midst of doing all of that, I just learned a ton about the crime, and I realized that it was a very underserved market. People
Hmm.
felt very helpless; they didn't know what to do, and I became a real lightning rod for this type of information, and it helped me just get a very large base of knowledge, and I just consolidated all of it into a course, and I made the Squatter Defender course. So people could know what to do about squatters and get actual education, because so much of it was like folklore. I'd heard about people that had poured roaches down the chimney to get rid of their squatters, people that had kicked in the door. Like there's been instances where people have taken their pew-pews and unalived each other over a squatter dispute.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy out there. So consolidating all this information was my goal, and did that for the Squatter Defender course, and now I'm offering it up to people.
Very nice. Let's talk about some practical prevention tips. What can somebody do to prevent this from happening? What do you recommend property owners do so that they don't fall victim of this?
Totally. So the biggest thing is definitely the most obvious. And the only way you're going to know if somebody is inside one of your properties is if you've got an alarm system and a camera, one or the other, but ideally both. And so it doesn't have to be a big, expensive, involved installation where you pay a guy to do it. No, in the Squatter Defender course, I offer a 50% off coupon with a free camera to Simply Safe. That's the company that I use. I don't work for them, but I've been pleased with them, so that's why I recommend them. And that's just a simple camera, a motion sensor, and a base station with a siren, so that if anybody walks into your property, you know about it. You get a notification on your phone. The siren hopefully scares them away. And you can look at the camera and see, are there packages up front that make my place look vacant? Who's going in and out of my house? You can see these things clear as day. You don't even have to pay for the professional monitoring. You can just, for the cops to show up, you can just know what's happening at your property. And then the moment that's not vacant, you take it out and you put it in another property that's vacant, because it's all portable and there's no install or anything. So, there's this perception that an alarm system is going to be a big pain or very costly, and maybe that was true, 10 or 20 years ago. But for these days, modern day, it's inexpensive and extremely effective.
It's true. What about the upkeep of the outside? If you have a property that is going to sit vacant for a while, do you think it helps to make sure that it doesn't look like it's abandoned?
That's another big piece of it, is not being a target. And so more often than not, these squatters aren't just walking down the street and entering into a place. No, they're vetting places. They're casing them to see, all right, because they don't want to get in there and then have the owners come back the next day or that afternoon. No, they want to stay there for as long as humanly possible, going completely undetected. So they're going to look for things like spider webs in doorways, overgrown lawns, things being upkept, things being left out. There's then there's the things that you don't do, like playing the AM radio on the full blast 24 hours a day to make it seem like people live there. That's like a dead giveaway. Please, nobody's here. Break into this house. So that, and leaving clothes on the clothesline to make it look like somebody's there, but clothes that have been on a clothesline for weeks on end look different. And so yeah, I cover all that in Squatter Defender. Hey, here's all the measures that you take to make sure that you're not going to be a victim in the first place, because as we all know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Very nice, thank you. I have a question. Have you ever looked into adverse possession and what that is with real estate properties? Maybe you can let our audience know. Because in that case, it actually ends up working, but it's a long protracted process. Have you ever looked into it?
Yeah. So people ask me all the time, hey, what's the deal with squatters' rights? And squatters' rights, it kind of means two separate things. There's the rights of squatters, like we've been talking about up until now, where people establish rights essentially as tenants. There's no real such thing in that case of actual squatters' rights. It's they get the rights as under landlord-tenant law at some point, either by occupying and fooling the cops or by some statutory length of time. But then with adverse possession, that's actually gaining title to the property by sticking around there openly and notoriously for a very long period of time, just like you're saying, Matias, a very long period of time. And it varies state by state. Sometimes it's like a few years or 5 years, or I'm not sure what the lowest one in the country is, but it's usually somewhere around 10 years or longer. So it's why these laws are on the books. There's a long legal theory about why it is, and it has to do with farmland and maintenance and stuff. But really, if you really want to adverse possession of a property and to gain title to it, you got to make sure that the owners are not going to find out about it for a decade. So
And you
Bit
have
of
to
a
pay
gamble
property
on your part.
taxes, I believe. You have to do there's a lot of things that, and then obviously if somebody comes and claims the property, whatever, all your efforts are gone.
Yeah, all your efforts are gone. Maybe you had a place to stay for a while, but if anybody knows of a place that nobody's looked at for the past 10 years, let me know. I'll go adverse possession it for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's talk about people getting help. This has been a very interesting conversation. So, somebody, he is finding themselves. You talked about the course, but I kind of want to go a little bit more into details of how people can reach you and how people can, like, if they find themselves into trouble, what is the right answer? Is it always an attorney, or what other tools have you created out there that are useful to people? Let's get those out and share them with our audience, please.
Totally. So the best thing you can do is go to squatterdefender.com and take the course. But if you don't want to invest the time and if you don't want to do that, and you just got to go straight to the source because you just found out 15 minutes ago you got a squatter and you got to act right now, I'm willing to talk with you. I'll consult with you. Sometimes I charge people, sometimes I don't. But it's sort of it's based on the case, because some of these are like really open and shut. I'll be like, all right, just do this, and but it's very context dependent. How long were they there? Who is it? Do you know them personally? There's a bunch of moving parts. And so when you consult with somebody like me, I can give you just the full range of options that you've got on this. And that's if you have somebody. If you're trying to prevent having a squatter, good for you. You should everybody should do this. And the Squatter Defender course is definitely your best bet. It's $199, and if you put in the promo code, I've got a special one for you and your listeners, Matias. If you put in promo code Matias, that's Matias, then you can get 20% off the purchase price and educate yourself all about squatters and show people that you mean business.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you very much to share that with our audience. I find it so fascinating. I wanted to actually ask you another question. Do you have a feeling? So I hear from multifamily investors in different states, and they say, "Oh, I'm not going to invest in California." I don't know how it is, where you are, but people say, "I'm not going to invest
I
in
hear
California
that too.
because the
Blue
tenant
states.
owns." Yeah. Do you find that this issue, at least in your experience, has it been more prevalent in certain areas over others?
Yes, in a word, yeah. So it's less going by blue states or red states, and a little bit more just like blue areas and red areas, and then rural and urban. It's much more common in urban areas, and those tend to be more liberal jurisdictions, and they tend to be more prevalent in places where landlord-tenant law is particularly favorable toward tenants, because the whole scam that because squatters, because they talk to each other on the internet, and their goal is to get the rights as tenants and do it in places where it takes a long time and it's a big hassle to kick out a tenant. And in like Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles, unless you're doing everything perfectly, it's going to take several months or more. And if you've got a squatter who knows what they're doing, if they got counsel that's helping them out, it's going to be even longer. So if the point for the squatter is to get as much free housing as possible, yeah, you're going to do a whole lot better in one of those places than you are in, like a small town where the sheriff knows all the bad actors, and he'll see Frankie the Stealer in the house and say, "All right, dude, get out of here. We both know that you don't live here." So yeah, it's there, and the whole thing unfortunately got very politicized when I was when I went viral, and it definitely resonated with a conservative audience. And I'm right down the middle politically. I didn't really engage one way or another, but I saw all the left wing nuts saying like, "Hey, screw you for being a developer and a landlord and owning property in the first place," and then the right wing people saying like, "Hey, they thought I was the actual squatter, and they said like, we're gonna find you, and we're gonna shoot you." And I'm like, okay,
Got it.
sounds good, man. So, but yeah, so there is a political element to this that, yeah, I definitely experienced when going viral.
So there are certain regions obviously are more prone, susceptible to this type of fraud, while other regions maybe see it less. Obviously, in large concentrated urban environment,
Hmm.
that's you're going to find more people, so you're going to find more bad actors.
Yeah, yeah. You're gonna, I mean, higher crime rates, more bad actors, and like I said, criminals talk, and it's a low risk, high reward crime. Anytime you got anything like that, if you could rob a bank and not go to prison for it, then yeah, there'd be a big rash of bank robberies. And so, anytime where there's low hanging fruit, you got people that can commit a crime, get away with it, and make off with any decent sum of money. Uh, you're going to get a proliferation of that kind of crime, and it's about 50. You expect to be out about 50 grand if you
Oh,
got a
wow.
really bad squatter
Yeah,
situation. Oh yeah.
that makes sense. Now, what about deed fraud? Is that something that somebody can you protect yourself against that, or is that just something that it's very difficult to look into?
Yeah, so yes and no. Getting your deeds stolen, unless there's just a full like redo of how deeds are funded and recorded in
Mhm.
counties all over the country, because it generally works the same way in every single county. Like, you bring the registrar a piece of paper that has, the notary stamp, a grantor, a grantee, and they
Right.
just record it. They look at it, but they're not studying it to make sure that, there's not checking signatures or anything like
They're
that.
not
They
calling
just
people up. Hey, did you sell
yeah.
your house?
Hey, is this Matias? Did you sell your house? Okay, I'm about to record this thing. No, it never happens.
Right.
So you can't prevent that part, but having the deed fraudulently recorded, that's a bad thing. We can all agree on that. And you need to get an action to quiet title to fix that.
Mhm.
But the real damage by a country mile is getting your equity stolen. And that can only happen to you after like several weeks, because you gotta, like, the guy has to steal it, then he has to find an end buyer, then they gotta open escrow, and then they gotta
Mhm.
close. So that's going to be weeks down the road. But if you've been made aware that your title has changed, if your house has been stolen, then you can prevent that happening. You can file an affidavit with the recorder, with the title company, and say, like, all right, this something's wrong here. This is fraudulently transferred, and we got to fix this. And the guy can't sell it, or he can't take out loans against it. So how you can track that is you go to your county page and you just push refresh over and over and again until you're completely blue in the face. Or you pay a few bucks a month to Title Fraud Defender. We monitor it for you 24/7, make sure that it's not stolen or transferred. And if it is, we let you know about it right away. And we're like, okay, here's the series of steps that you take to fix this thing. And so that's your best bet, Title Fraud Defender, which I just so happen to be the owner of.
Got it. Got it. All right. One more time before I let you go. We have a coupon code, which is my name, my first name, Matias, Matias. So anybody that goes to give me the website one more time.
Yeah, that would be squatterdefender.com and titlefrauddefender.com.
Perfect. George, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. Do you have any parting words for our audience?
Yeah, if you want to reach out to me on social, I'm pretty easy to find. It's,
Mhm.
Google George McCleary, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on all the platforms. I'm on there as myself and also as McCleary Realty and Development. Like I was saying before, I've been a real estate investor for a really long time. So you can see what I'm up to. Send me a message, give me a follow. I'll follow you back. And I'm always willing to talk to people and hear from people. So go and find me on all the socials, and let's chat. I got a lot of stories to tell, and I'd love to hear yours.
All right, beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this episode, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Probate Realtor Show. Find more episodes and interact with us at probaterealtor.la. That's probaterealtor.la. Listen, ask questions, and get results. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The Probate Realtor Matias Baker Masucci is a licensed real estate broker in California, DRE number 020547763. Any legal information provided is for informational purposes only and not for the purpose of providing legal advice. Contact an attorney to obtain advice with respect to any particular legal issue or problem. We make no guarantees as to the accuracy of any information. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.